It's a club record that Newcastle have agreed.
I'm just not sure with Woltemade that he's the best option they could have gone for.
The Isak saga has dominated the whole thing. 6 foot 6 inches, Lloyd. That is 1 or 2 inches, I believe, taller than you.
Maybe a foot taller than me, I think.
Hello and welcome to Transfers Exposed. I am Will Pugh. That next to me is one of our Chelsea reporters at Sun Sport, Lloyd Canfield, joining me once again in the Transfers Exposed studio. Lloyd, your debut last week obviously wasn't too much for you, mate.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you very much for waking me up at 6:30 this morning to get in here to film
my
this.
pleasure, mate.
This is your exclusive press pass to the hottest transfer stories straight from the Sun Sport newsroom.
Of course it is, Lloyd. And for the duration of this window, I've been telling you that we are here every Tuesday and Friday until the transfer window slams shut on September the 1st. Well, that is Monday. So this is the last studio show of Transfers Exposed for this transfer window till January. Thanks so much to all of you for watching. But for one last time, we are going to break down the facts and figures of the two biggest moves in the Premier League today before we come back on deadline day for the Transfers Exposed special. We'll be camped out in this studio all day, so make sure you keep your eye across all Sun Football and Sun Sport platforms, across socials and of course on YouTube, as we will be here giving you live updates as the day rumbles on.
Things are hotting up massively, aren't they, as we head towards the end of the transfer window. Today, we're of course going to be talking about Newcastle's new striker Nick Woltemade, who is signing for them in a £69 million deal.
And as Phil Cadden writes on the back page of this morning's Sun, Lloyd, 23-year-old Woltemade has already agreed personal terms with Newcastle, flew to the northeast on Thursday night for a medical on Friday morning. Yeah, so it's a club record that Newcastle have agreed, 69 million quid. Nick Woltemade from Stuttgart, as you mentioned, 65 million pounds plus 4 million in add-ons. 6 foot 6 inches, Lloyd. That is 1 or 2 inches, I believe, taller than you.
Maybe a foot taller than me, I think.
2 or 3 feet taller. Yeah, I know the feeling, mate. Don't worry, I'm in no position to mock. But we reported in July that Manchester United were having a look at Woltemade. There was a bit of a feeling at the time. Obviously, they've gone for Benjamin Sesko since from RB Leipzig. There was a little bit of a sense at the time that perhaps, as often happens during transfer windows, some of the briefings coming out around the Woltemade story were kind of just to spook RB Leipzig a little bit into lowering their transfer demands. However, this is a very, very talented player. Obviously, this is all wrapped in, Lloyd, to the Alexander Isak saga and whether or not he goes to Liverpool. Newcastle have always stated for the duration of this transfer window that if they were to sanction the sale of Alexander Isak, two things needed to happen. One, they needed to sign 2 replacement strikers, and the second thing was the money needed to be right. Liverpool Chiefs have sanctioned a £130 million deal. We obviously know what's happened with Isak, with him going on strike and all that sort of stuff. Lots of focus and talks around Newcastle potentially going for Nicholas Jackson. This one, to be fair, seems to have crept up on everyone a little bit, but very, very highly rated indeed. This is weirdly probably good news for Liverpool fans, because if this gets done at 69 million, like you said, then very much the sense is that the Isak deal can be done. Johan Visser, there's still interest there from Newcastle as well. What do you make of this, first of all, Lloyd? Because Newcastle obviously had a couple of bids rejected for Jorgen Strand Larsen from Wolves. They're expected to go in again with a third one of 60 million after 50 and 55 got knocked back. But reports yesterday suggesting Wolves are going to stand firm on that as well. So they've had to switch their attention elsewhere after a bit of a messy transfer window. Woltemade at first. We'll go into all the details and what it could mean for other clubs in a minute. What do you make of it?
I think it will be a good move for Newcastle. It is quite a lot of money, £69 million, but I'm just not sure with Woltemade that he's the best option they could have gone for. I actually think they would have been better off going for Nicholas Jackson, someone who's already been proven in the Premier League. We don't know with signings from the Bundesliga. Some of them can be a massive hit, the likes of Erling Haaland, but also some of them not so great. Timo Werner, Nicholas,
Christopher Nkunku,
of course.
Maybe Benjamin Sesko, people are already saying.
Benjamin Sesko, yeah. I think he we saw him in the under-21 Euros. That's where he kind of announced himself to the
Of course,
world.
yeah. Played England in the final, yeah.
Yeah, he was brilliant there and great to watch. But he was a 23-year-old playing in the under-21 Euros, and that's where he's set the world alight. So that just doesn't really add up to me. I think that the age that we're seeing players now kind of burst onto the scene. You look at Lamine Yamal, Estevao, these kind of players.
Estevao, is that the officially
that's how you
sanctioned
that's how you
pronunciation?
pronounce it. Yeah.
All the Chelsea fans I've spoken to have been referring to him as Estevao.
Yeah, or we'll just call him Steve. So
Yeah. So go on. So do that one again. Estevao.
Estevao.
All right. Yeah. Nice.
Or Steve-O or Big Steve.
Big Steve. Yeah.
So yeah, he is 23 years old. That to me isn't now necessarily a up and coming young striker. He will be expected to come in to Newcastle and basically do the job that Alexander Isak's done for them, which I don't know if he can necessarily do.
Do you think people will? But just to give him a little bit of slack, to be fair to him, 17 goals and 3 assists in all competitions last season in 33 appearances. So it's not like he's played 50, 60 games like some people do. That goal rate is better than 1 in 2. Stuttgart had an extraordinary season. They're onto a real good thing at the moment, as we know, in the Bundesliga. I do think, it feels like he's going under the radar a little bit with a lot of the talk around strikers as there has been this summer. I sort of feel, and you're right, 69 million does seem a lot of money if you just look at it like that. But if Newcastle are factoring in that they're expecting 130 in for Isak, it's not, it's barely more than 50% of the income they're going to get in. It's not too bad. Do you honestly think, though, that anyone at Newcastle, fans, board, staff, or football fans, pundits, journalists in the wider football industry and fraternity, do you think that anyone actually expects anyone who goes into Newcastle to replicate what Alexander Isak done?
No. I think he is, if not the best, the second best striker in the Premier League. So no one coming in will be expected to exactly replicate what Isak's done. For what it's worth, I think Woltemade will go on to be a player who has the potential, at least, to come pretty close. They're not too dissimilar in build, in ability, technically.
In terms of Isak, you mean?
Yeah, he's almost as close to Alexander Isak as you can get, in the sense that Isak is such a unique profile of player because he's so tall, so good on the ball, such a good finisher. But Woltemade can be all those things. It's just whether he comes into the Premier League, hits the ground running, and can really score the goals that Isak has scored for Newcastle.
I'm just trying to see what height Alexander Isak is, and
6'4",
as usual, 6'4".
Yeah.
So another couple of inches Woltemade's got over him. I personally like it a lot. One thing's worth noting though, Lloyd, is that you'll be able to tell us a little bit more about this. The Nicholas Jackson deal, just because they do this, doesn't mean that they don't end up signing Nicholas Jackson as well, does it?
I actually think him and Nicholas Jackson could be a great partnership for Newcastle, because Jackson, we saw at Chelsea, he's not the main man striker, that the kind of striker that Newcastle want, that Chelsea wanted, that Man United think they've got in Benjamin Sesko. But he is very good on the ball again. He can play brilliant little passes. We saw him a couple of times at Chelsea into Cole Palmer, who would then finish them off. I'm just not sure he's ready for the pressure of being the number 9 at a big club. So I think if you partner Nicholas Jackson with a striker who's happy to take on the mantle of being Newcastle United's number 9, that could be a really good partnership. And
no one plays 2 up front anymore, though, do they?
I know, but Nicholas Jackson can also play kind of slightly off the left. I just think Newcastle, though, aren't going to move away from that system that they've got of kind of 4-3-3.
Yeah.
3 attackers. It'll be Gordon, Ilanga.
That's kind of my point.
Woltemade,
yeah.
So, in a sense, bringing Nicholas Jackson in as well.
One thing, though, what I think so many people are forgetting, Newcastle are in the Champions League next season.
Yeah.
I know they've had an absolutely minging transfer window, to be quite frank. Obviously, it's more about the players they've missed out on, and the Isak saga has dominated the whole thing. Worth noting, though, Bayern Munich were also keen on Woltemade. And Bayern Munich, as we know, their sort of MO is just hoover up anyone else who dares to be good in the Bundesliga, and threatens their total monopoly on Bundesliga titles. So that in itself tells you that there is a decent player in there. You can't argue with those numbers, really. And given, I know it's extremely harsh to judge Benjamin Sesko on his start at Manchester United already, given the malaise that Manchester United are still in. But given the money that Manchester United paid for Sesko, although you're right, £69 million is a lot of money for Woltemade. Given that the money he's paid there and the numbers that Sesko delivered for Leipzig last season, which were they were good. They weren't Victor Gyökeres in for Sporting Lisbon numbers. Definitely a weaker league in Portugal than Bundesliga, so that is important context to note. But I think this might be one of those where it goes under the radar a little bit. I think Newcastle fans, if Alexander Isak leaves, there will be that desire, almost because of the anger they're going to have. Not anger, but disappointment. Or anger, and some will be angry. Some will be angry, of course, yeah. But anger, disappointment, all of that sort of stuff about the Isak situation if he does leave. I think almost because of that, they're a hugely supportive fan base anyway, right? Yeah. Newcastle, what a place to play, particularly as a number 9. It's that storied Newcastle number 9, one of the most sort of fated strikers positions in the country. I do also think, because the Isak situation, though, there will be an extra layer of support and desire among the Newcastle fans for whoever replaces him to 100%. Do well, to almost be a bit of a two fingers to Isak and go, well, yeah, stuff you, mate. Look, the club can go on and thrive without you. But on the two strikers thing, the only concern, and you'll know more watching Chelsea as much as you do, the Nicholas Jackson thing, do you think these two players are similar enough in type, right? Because let's have it right. Liverpool have signed Ugo Ekitike from Eintracht Frankfurt, who has hit the ground running since he's joined. Had a brilliant start. And him and Alexander Isak are almost identical profiles, right? Yeah. So that could be a good and a bad thing. But on one hand, you say, well, that's brilliant, because when Isak can't play, Ekitike slots in, it's exactly the same system. The negative is, well, if a game's not going particularly well with Isak up front, you can't, when you bring the replacement on, there's no variety, and it's just you're just replacing like for like. Woltemade and Jackson, if that was to get done, what do you think that's, of the things I just said there, do you think that would be a positive thing or a negative thing? Because they're arguably a little bit different.
I think it should be a positive thing. If they are to sign both of them, then what it gives you is he would likely be the starting number 9 option. Nicholas Jackson probably on the bench, can come on later on in games and be a menace for opponents. And also, like you said, Nicholas Jackson.
Want to do that though, mate?
I don't think he will want to to that, but he doesn't seem to have an awful lot of other options on the table at the minute.
It's only Aston Villa, isn't it? And linking up with Unai Emery again, his old Villarreal boss, of course. And I don't know what you're hearing or what your sense is as far as that goes, but it feels like game time. If he's going to be a backup, he might as well be a backup at Chelsea, albeit he'll be the tertiary backup.
Could also be a backup, I believe, at Bayern Munich if the loan deal with an obligation to buy kind of goes through.
Yeah, but even then, he's not going to. He prefers to stay in the Prem.
Yeah,
I think I'm reading at the moment. Yeah, it just so if you were Jackson then, and this deal gets done and Isak leaves as we're anticipating, and you've got Newcastle and Villa on the table, where do you go?
I thought from the start of the window, I thought Nicholas Jackson to Newcastle makes the most sense. But this does change things in the sense that he's not going to be the starting striker for them. I don't know also
perhaps, but then they've got so many games to play, haven't they?
I don't know also if he would be the starting striker for Villa because they've got Ollie Watkins. So
but he was falling out of favour at the end of last season, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I think my heart says if I was Nicholas Jackson, I would still want to go to Newcastle.
I mean, ultimately they're in the Champions League, aren't they? There was lots of talk in the Bundesliga calling him the next Harry Kane. Obviously, somewhat somewhat of a different profile to that. Well, as far as Jorgen Strand Larsen goes, he banged in 2 against West Ham in the League Cup on Tuesday night as they came from 2-1 down just 10 minutes ago. He come off the bench, totally changed the game.
Not that that's a huge achievement at
No,
the moment.
no, quite, mate. No, quite. I did say earlier this week when I was talking on Tactics Exposed, go and watch the latest episode if you haven't already, as we look ahead, myself and Dean Scoggins, to the biggest game in the Premier League this weekend, which is, of course, Liverpool versus Arsenal. There'll be a card for that video somewhere up here, so you can go and click on that after this, of course, after you got to the end of this episode. Yeah, excellent player. It's the news yesterday was very much that although Newcastle were expected to bid 60 million again, or were expected to bid 60 million again, Wolves are expected to stand firm and say no because they've already lost a lot of talent this window.
Yeah.
He feels cut from a similar cloth to Woltemade, to be fair, whereas Jackson doesn't necessarily. Just one thing to wrap up. If you were Newcastle and the Woltemade deal gets done and they want another number 9, which isn't crazy, the Johan Visser one still feels like they would want to do that deal. That would be around the 30 million quid mark. Visser wants to make that move. However, not necessarily sort of an out-and-out striker, a bit more versatile. Strand Larsen or Nicholas Jackson?
Nicholas Jackson.
Definitely? Yeah? Even though Strand Larsen's more of a similar profile?
I just think there's a lot more to Nicholas Jackson's all-round game, and he offers a slightly different profile to what they've already got. So in those Champions League games, when you're struggling to break down a defence, or even in the Premier League, he just offers you something different. And if you're going to bring him on around the 60th, 70th minute mark, you can attack a defence in a different way with Nicholas Jackson on the pitch.
Yeah. All right, Lloyd. Nick Woltemade, you heard it here first. If Newcastle get this deal over the line, worth noting, as we've already said, that he's agreed personal terms with the club, travelled to Newcastle on Thursday night, expected to have a medical on Friday morning, probably as we're recording this very show. So the deal expected to get done. You heard it here first, though. Woltemade to score more goals in the Premier League than Benjamin Sesko this window.
Yeah.
You have any? Yes, 100%. Right, Newcastle fans, let us know what you think of this deal in the comments. And if you are going to dip into the transfer market, once again, whether that's Jorgen Strand Larsen, Nicholas Jackson, Johan Visser, who else do you want? Like this video, subscribe to Sun Sports YouTube channel, and let us know what you think in the comments.